Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the different layers of the earth. And when we talk about the layers of the earth, we're referencing the composition or what those layers are made up of. So, to break down the different layers, there are three main types. We have the crust, which the crust is where our land masses are located, it's where the oceans are located. And this makes up less than 1% of Earth's mass. So it's shared between the two types of crust, like I said, oceanic and continental. Now, inside of the Earth, if we were to slice it open, we would find an area known as the mantle. And in this layer, it's very hot, it's very dense, and it represents 68% of the Earth's mass. So, with the mantle, this is the area at which we have convection currents. So we have this heating and cooling and the rising and falling of this magma. And as it rises up, it starts to heat up. And as it cools down, it starts to sink because we know cold air or anything cold is more dense. And if it's warmer, it's going to be less dense. Now, when we say there's convection currents happening, you have to remember in that mantle, you're going to have movement and motion that's occurring. And that's what's going to help create the motion of the land masses and plate tectonic motion. And we'll learn more about that next week. But just always remember that the mantle, due to that heating and cooling of the magma, is going to cause motion. Convection currents work the same way with weather. It's why we get weather patterns. The heating and cooling of our atmosphere. It's why we have ocean currents. So we've talked about it before, but here it is again where it plays a role in how the earth works. So moving on from the mantle, we have what we know as the core. So essentially the center of the earth. So when we have this core, it's mostly iron metal, and it makes up around 30% of the earth, and it is made of a solid inner layer and a liquid outer layer. So the inside, known as the inner core, is going to be solid. So solid inner. And then we have a liquid outer core. But do remember that we usually refer to these layers separately. So we have our inner core, outer core, our mantle, and our crust. Now, the reason why the center of the inner core is considered solid is because it is under so much pressure from all of these other layers that it actually causes the inner core to become a solid and solid iron, and there's a lot of nickel located in the inner core as well. So when we talk about properties of the different layers, we can break these layers up into other categories known as the lithosphere and the asthenosphere. So we can divide these layers up into mechanical properties. So for instance, the lithosphere is composed of the crust the crust and this outer top layer of the mantle. And so when we say lithosphere, we're talking about that small section. So it's typically brittle, and it's solid. We know that. And it's easily cracked and broken. Now, the asthenosphere is below that. So the asthenosphere is going to be considered the upper mantle. It's solid, but it can flow and bend. So it's still moving around, but it's not going to be what we consider like a substance that's similar to our crust. So you can kind of think of it like silly putty almost. So it's flexible enough, but it's still considered a solid. So that being said, we have a lot of different labels that we can talk about with the different layers of the earth. The main ones you need to remember are our inner, outer, mantle, and crust. Do remember that the mantle makes up a good portion of the layers and contributes to the movement of the lithosphere. Like I said, we'll be talking about that next week. But this lithosphere essentially moves on top of the asthenosphere, so it floats. And due to that motion of the mantle, that's what's going to cause that movement to occur. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little rundown on the different layers. And I will be seeing you shortly. Bye.